The Netherlands will be returning the 119 Benin Bronzes to Nigeria that are currently in the Dutch state collection. The Dutch Minister of Education, Culture and Science and the Nigerian Director General of National Commission for Museums and Monuments will sign a transfer agreement in Leiden, the Netherlands. The first 80 objects are expected to arrive in Nigeria later this year. Joining us now on the morning show for a chat on the returning process of these bronzes is Michel Deelen, Consul-General of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Nigeria. Good morning, and you're most welcome to the morning show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I mean, first of all, I'd said earlier that this is really great news, so it's great that you're coming on a day that we're talking about something really fantastic. But I'd like you to tell us, first of all, I know that it's later this year. Is there a specific time period when the bronzes will arrive? And then, who was involved in the facilitation of the return of these bronzes from the Netherlands?
Sure. No, thank you very much for having me, because I think this is also an important subject to discuss. And it's a day in which a wrong from the past can be corrected, and it's about time, we would say. So the bronzes actually are until now part of the Dutch government collection, as you mentioned. And as we are sitting here in the Netherlands, they're signing the agreements that will hand over the ownership to the Nigerian government in the form of the Nigerian Commission for Museums and Monuments. And then it's basically up to the Nigerian government from that moment on to say what they want to do with the objects and when they will come to Nigeria, and where they will be on display or where they will be stored or what they will do with it. So I think it depends a little bit on the capacity of the Commission for Museums and Monuments, on the storage facilities and so on, when they will come back. But I'm assuming that will definitely be this year already, yes.
Excellent.
All right, so a couple of things. Number one, can you tell me the trajectory? Was this part of the Ovorawe's loot?
Yes.
So what was the trajectory? Secondly, for all the millions earned in Dutch guilders or euros gotten in museum at the exposure of all of this, is the Dutch government also going to share some money with Nigeria in all of this and some reparative costs, you know?
Mm-hmm. On your first question, the trajectory, there was a study done, that's this one basically, a provenance study. And based on this...
I'd like to have that afterwards.
It's available online. I'll share the link, which is my only
link.
copy.
Yeah.
But that's part of the Dutch, let's say, restitution policy. The policy was enacted just before COVID. That's why it took some time to implement it because of the COVID period, whereby if objects are clearly looted, stolen, basically, in a colonial context, then the policy applies, and if you can identify where the objects came from exactly, they should be returned. Now, this book is basically the identification of all these 119 objects that you mentioned.
Thank you.
And yes, those ones came from the loot in 1897. Yes, exactly. There were some objects in the museum that were basically purchased on markets, or some that came in later that were not part of the original ones that came from the palace. Now, how did they get to the Netherlands? They were actually bought in auctions. I think when most of the loot reached the UK, some of them were put in musea, but some of them were also sold off. And from the ones that were sold off on international markets, the museum in Leiden, at the time an ethnographic museum, bought a series of them. And that's how they ended up in the Netherlands.
Will the museum or the government of Netherlands be sharing some of the revenues and all the years on these materials that were looted?
Very good.
Is that in the works?
Question. Now,
in reparation?
Museums in the Netherlands, especially this museum, are not very well known for making a lot of money on this. If you look at the museum in the Netherlands that generates a lot of money from tourism, it's like the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, the Van Gogh Museum, the Museum for Modern Art in Amsterdam. This specific museum, yes, it of course generates revenue, but it's subsidized by the Dutch government. So I know that people always have the impression that you make a lot of money with museums. You actually make a lot of money more with the infrastructure around it, with the tourists that come, with the tourists that stay in hotels around it, the tourists that spend money on the museum shop. But to run a museum by itself costs a lot of money. So it's not like we became rich in the Netherlands because we had the Benin Bronzes on display. But on the other hand, of course, you know, the time has passed and there should be a form of compensation, or let's say a form of collaboration.
Reparation?
Well, I would more go for the collaboration side of it, because you can't repair what happened. What happened was that the objects were stolen. They were not in Benin for more than 100 years. That's something you can't really repair. What we can work on, and what we are going to work on, is to work together with Nigerian public and private museums in, you know, the way of running, managing, training museum staff. And also in making sure that there are people in Nigeria who do this provenance research themselves. So it's more as from here on we will continue together in the quest for improving museums and improving the access, basically, to these works. Because we're talking now about basically the ownership, but that's just one step. I'm a lawyer by background.
I suspected so.
So for me,
yeah.
If something is stolen, it should be given back to the owner. That is different from what do you do with it afterwards, or where will it be on display.
Yes.
Of course, this should be on display in Benin City, but not only there.
Yes. Yes.
But that's a decision for the Nigerian
So
government.
And Michel,
you're against the reparation because, yes, you're a lawyer, but if something is stolen and we know how the thing was used, even if it's a smidgen, a kobo, a guilder, or anything, that was also the royalties accrued to what was stolen. It is only right in returning the entire package that you say, okay, take this, but also take some form that accrued, and you can use it in a collaboration and say, okay, we can pay for research, we can pay for upgrade, we can pay for XYZ museum here in that collaborative form.
I think that's
because the thing was not stolen and kept somewhere. The thing was stolen and exhibited and used to also generate foot traffic to the museum.
Yeah, some were. Unfortunately, some were actually also kept in storage. But I think it's not so relevant where they were.
Yeah.
I see your point, and of course, that's why the museums work together. That's why the museums internationally work together to make sure that we build and fund also the capacity of Nigerian museums.
That's very good.
And that, of course, it makes complete sense.
Michel, I was saying earlier on that I suspected you were a lawyer because you kept on emphasizing that thing of ownership, and I knew you didn't say, but inside you were making a difference between ownership and possession, which is a very beautiful concept, especially for something like this. Now, so would you, personally, in terms of principle, then in terms of government, consider a situation based on collaboration, you said, where it is possible to identify that this object belongs to a country, but let us put it in a place where more people in the world can see it, and now the benefit of more people seeing it can be shared between those who have ownership and those who have possession. I say this knowing very well that this is not a very popular stance for a lot of viewers. People want to get it back to Benin. But I think I want you to that concept of ownership and possession and shared collaboration.
Yeah, I think it's very important. It's maybe not a very popular position in Nigeria, but it was also for a long time not a very popular position with the museums and in Europe or in the US. And that's probably why it took so long for everybody to realize that these objects had to be returned. Because it's like we have these objects in a museum, there's a plaque next to it, and for a long time the provenance wasn't even mentioned. Or it wasn't even mentioned how they actually reached these museums. So the Benin Bronzes, among many of Nigeria's great artworks from the past and also the present, of course, are so beautiful that they should be shown everywhere, I think, as an example of Nigerian, of African art from those days whereby we can get rid of that strange misconception that there was no history in Africa, or there was no proof or no written. You know, the first university was in Africa. We know. How come that is not general knowledge around the world? So these bronzes can be like ambassadors for Nigeria or for the African continent, wherever they are on display, to show the quality, the capacity, the beauty of the art that was made in Nigeria. And I talk a lot with my Nigerian friends on this very subject.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. But thank you very much. I think despite the brevity of time, it's been a robust conversation. And we look forward to having those 119 bronzes back home where they belong. Thank you. Michel Deelen, Consul-General of the Kingdom of Netherlands here in Nigeria. Thank you.